What are some terrifying human body facts? Story 1. After a minor injury, like a sports injury, sprained ankle, or small bone fracture, it is possible to develop acute compartment syndrome. Muscles are surrounded by tissue, fascia. When swelling occurs, intracompartmental pressure rises because fasciae do not stretch. Blood can no longer reach the tissue, so no oxygen supply. No oxygen means the death of tissue. Necrosis can occur in as little as 3 hours. This can result in amputation of the limb or death. Story 2. Getting hit in the head and temporarily losing your memory is not some cartoon trope. I had a teenage employee who got a head injury protecting a friend in a fight and missed a week of work. When he got back, he said it was like living in a dream world when you can't use long-term memory. You have to be constantly supervised when you don't know your name, your family, or anything about anybody, period, all while nursing an injured skull. Everyone is a stranger, but some are familiar. It was even stranger to him how it suddenly switched back on after 3 days, just sitting on the couch while watching TV. In an instant, he just knew again why he was hurt. The fight that took place in a park, the rock his head hit when he was pushed off his feet, must have been the most profound moment of realization for him. Story 3. A thing I didn't know until it happened this last summer, right after I turned 30. You can just develop epilepsy. The type of seizure and where it happens in your brain affects what happens during the seizure. And not all seizures are the go unconscious and shake kind. You can be aware of them. It was already mentioned in another comment, but SUDEP, sudden unexpected death in epilepsy, is where you just go into a seizure and never wake up. People who have seizures in their sleep are most at risk. Story 4. Only because I recently had 2 patients diagnosed with these syndromes. Both require immediate medical care. Both are treatable but can cause long-term complications. Guillain-Barré syndrome. It's rare, but basically your immune system attacks your nerves, paralyzing your entire body, usually after a viral infection, such as the flu or COVID, although the exact cause is unknown. Stevens-Johnson syndrome. Also rare, but it's a skin and mucus disorder, often a reaction to medication or infection. Basically, it causes your skin to break out in a painful rash and blisters, can cause your skin to necropsy. Story 5. There is a rare skin disease called nevus comedonicus. It comprises groups of pits filled with black keratinous plugs resembling blackheads, with inflammatory acne lesions developing later. Lesions may develop at any time from birth to middle age, but are usually present at birth or develop before the age of 10 years. As far as I know, you can't really squeeze them out, but if you do, it hurts and it will regrow in a short period of time. It also left tiny holes in the first layers of your skin. Story 6. Hematopoiesis, the process of building blood cells, is a particularly interesting one. 2.4 million red blood cells are made each second. They survive for 120 days. The total amount is upheld. But have you thought about how exact that production needs to be? After all, both too many and too few will kill you or make you very ill. Give thanks to your bone marrow that does such an extremely exact job for you. Story 7. When you move your eyes, you can't see. Now, when you move your eyes, your vision is blurry as hell, something that the brain can do nothing with, so that information is useless, and it doesn't want that. So when you move your eye, you don't see. But like, you don't see black or nothing, you just don't see. The see portion turns off for that split second of movement, but what you end up with is a hole in your vision, a split second every time you move your eyes where you saw nothing, which for some reason that juicy meatball in your head also doesn't like. So the brain kind of f***s with you. It f***s with you by kind of doing time travel in your brain. It takes the last scene before moving the eye, and the first scene after moving the eye creates what it thinks the in-between would look like and inserts it in where the eye doesn't see anything while moving. But it's doing this after your eye is already steady again, so your brain tricks you into seeing something that you didn't. This is best noticeable with a watch. Look at a watch or clock with a second hand moving. Then, when the hand is about to move your eye and look at the hand. It will have moved, yes, but it seems to take longer than a second for it to move again, because the brain knew it would move to that spot and put it in where you moved your eye. Kinda messed up and terrifying to show how easily your brain can screw with your perception. I also probably explained it way too complicated. Story 8. Your immune system can develop severe allergic reactions to stuff for no reason whatsoever. Want to take some medicine that you've taken hundreds of times before, and now you die within 20 minutes. It happened to me with penicillin-based antibiotics. I spent all my life taking them until that one time I ended up in the ICU from one pill. The same thing happened to me, but with ibuprofen. Last October, I went to the ER to get rabies shots due to a hilarious encounter with a bat, and I got bit as a result. When asked if I was allergic to any medication, I of course said ibuprofen, and that it was random. I took a tablet one day and developed hives almost immediately after. Then I said it was a while ago and wasn't sure if it indeed was the ibuprofen or if it was coincidentally something else, but haven't had ibuprofen since and have not had hives since, so I'm not exactly sure, but since I'm in an ER, I could try it out. The doctor declined to perform this experiment as he laughed and said, "We don't need to explain the reasons for the ER visit." Story 9. Once a month, on average, about half the population goes through a process in which one of their organs sheds its lining, which must remove itself from being stuck to the walls of said organ. This results in, on average, a week long of constant bleeding. The organ contracts to push out the blood and tissue, which must also pass through a hole that is typically around a millimeter or so, or less open during this period of time, on average. Pretty scary stuff. Story 10. Body fact adjacent. Here are some interesting diseases to keep you up at night. Fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva, a genetic disease in which the muscles and connective tissues gradually turn to bone, eventually leading to complete immobilization and death due to the chest not being able to expand during breathing. While it can be inherited, most cases are due to a random genetic mutation. Huntington's disease, another genetic disease resulting in progressive inability to control movements, impaired speech and swallowing, and dementia. Patients are eventually bedbound immobile, can't communicate, and need a feeding tube. This one is typically inherited, but it can rarely pop up without any family history. Prion diseases, exposure to an abnormally folded prion protein causes other normal proteins in the brain to fold abnormally, leading to rapid deterioration in brain function. Includes some lovely types such as Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, CJD, fatal familial insomnia, and Kuru. Can run in families or be transmitted through ingestion/direct contact with affected tissues. Normal disinfection procedures do not get rid of it, hence the panic over mad cow disease, which can produce variant CJD in humans. Always leads to coma and death. Story 11. Scleroderma is an autoimmune disease that causes hardening and tightening of the skin and has different levels of severity. The different systematic forms can affect your ability to swallow, can cause organ failure, make calcium deposits grow under your skin, give you Raynaud's, and the tightness and hardening of the skin on your face and hands can get so bad and painful it can severely affect your mobility. Doctors do not know what causes it, and there's no cure. Treatment focuses on relieving symptoms and trying to get them to go into remission as much as possible. Story 12. The danger triangle of the face. This area around the nose is drained by the facial vein, which directly communicates to the cavernous sinus, a major venous cavity nestled deep in the skull and adjacent to the brain and other important things. If the cavernous sinus gets infected via a popped pimple in the danger triangle, the blood within it can clot, leading to blindness, impaired eye movements, and bulging eyes. Even with antibiotics and blood thinners, This can be fatal in 20–30% of cases. Story 13. All of pregnancy. Babies can kick you and break your ribs or hips. You can lose all your teeth, randomly develop breaking of bones from loss of calcium, since the fetus sucks it out of your bones if you don't consume enough extra. Randomly develop diabetes and blood pressure issues that can be permanent. Your hair color and texture can permanently change, or you lose your hair. And at least in the US, I'm sure it's similar in other places, pregnancy is when you're most at risk for medical or medical malpractice, death, or homicide. Story 14. Stone baby syndrome. Basically, and this is a really basic explanation, lots of science is missing. Look it up. It's horrifying and fascinating, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone. It's similar to an ectopic pregnancy, except the baby doesn't always form in the fallopian tube. It can form in the uterus too, but it isn't viable and it effectively starts calcifying. Sometimes the body doesn't recognize it, and it either ignores it while it grows bigger and bigger, sometimes unnoticed, sometimes getting more layers or forming stone on surrounding organs, quite apart from ectopic pregnancies in general, which are frankly terrifying. Also, not trying to be political, just making a statement, people who don't understand know about female biology shouldn't be in control of it. Story 15. Cancer can come at any time and be undiagnosed by doctors because they all think that the symptoms point to one of their commonly treated issues and refuse to believe anything else. You will believe them because they have a degree, even though the majority of lab works don't show stuff like that, but you don't know that. So you go by the opinion of your doctor, which turns out to be entirely wrong. And really all your symptoms were caused by something else entirely and not properly treated until you are beyond the point of a normal and easy recovery. Story 16. Necrotizing fasciitis is a bacterial infection that you can get, usually from still water sources, i.e. a pond, lake, bucket of water left outside, that will eat your skin and body. You can only get it from an open wound because the bacteria needs to get to your bloodstream, but once it does, you have to get to the hospital. I saw one story of a dude who waited a night and lost his finger after trying to get a football out of a pond. If he waited any longer, it could have been his hand. Also, note it literally gives you agonizing pain and turns your appendages black and fall off. It's no joke. I used to have panic attacks from the idea of getting it. Even creepier, it doesn't even have to be from a still body of water. Anything can have necrotizing fasciitis on it. It's just typically found in still bodies of water. Hope that was terrifying enough for y'all. P.S. Don't search it up or you will be traumatized. Story 17. Hypertension, smoking, alcohol, diabetes, and big one, genetics, all are part of aneurysms. However, a significant number of people died of aneurysm but were not diagnosed or had an autopsy. Nobody wants to pay for an autopsy. So, it is very common to have undiagnosed aneurysms in you or your family history. They are found by accident most of the time. Oh yeah, if it ruptures, there is a good chance you bleed to death before you get to surgery. Story 18. As a fetus, stem cells that are meant to specialize into the tissues that form the lining of your uterus can be displaced within your body as it develops, but will still develop into those types of tissues. Therefore, when you are born and grow, uterine tissue can grow in different parts of your body. These tissues, high endometriosis, release their own hormones and inflammation, which cause responses in the organs they are attached to. I almost died when I was 19 due to severe gastrointestinal inflammation, including losing 60 pounds in a month from such a severe illness. Turns out it was endometriosis that had grown all over my bowels, all the way up to my ribs, as well as on my bladder, causing interstitial cystitis, my ovaries, and my rectum. My uterus was completely diseased from adenomyosis, which is basically when endometriosis grows within the walls of your uterus and has to be removed. The only way to cure it, there is no real guaranteed cure, is to remove the adhesions completely, even the parts rooted in your other tissues, as any remaining will simply grow back again. Some people can even have endometriosis adhered to their heart and lungs. People without uteruses can also get endometriosis. However, it is rare. Story 19. Myself and my kids just got over a bout of H1N1, which put me in a cycle of reading up on Spanish flu. The flu itself did not kill most of the people who died of it, and it was unique in that it mostly killed young, healthy people. It consistently caused the patient's own immune system to go into overdrive and do so much damage to the organs that it killed its own host. AFAIK, it's not the only virus to do that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this kind of cytokine storm death wasn't uncommon in early COVID patients either. The more robust the patient's immune system actually was, the more likely they were to suffer multiple organ failure and die. Story 20. Immune systems can be big jerks, as we all already know, when it comes to autoimmune diseases. Some viruses can cause your immune system to go into overdrive and just keep making copies of cells that attack and destroy your organs. In my case, strep is a really rare disease that causes my immune system to continuously make antibodies that destroy my kidney cells. There's no cure, and it comes back even if you get a new kidney. Additionally, our bodies are really good at masking symptoms, especially in the case of kidney disease, to where people don't know they are sick until they are in the end stage. Story 21. A surprising amount of modern medical knowledge was acquired by Unit 731, a secret imperial Japanese research branch that performed some of the worst atrocities of World War II. For example, we know that the human body is 2-3 water because one of the experiments they performed was weighing a live human, then weighing their corpse after completely dehydrating it, and found that it was 2-3 lighter. We know the best method of treating frostbite is submerging the affected area in hot water, because they inflicted frostbite on thousands of Chinese prisoners of war and then tried various treatments to see what worked. Almost everything we know about the spread and treatment of syphilis is because they experimented heavily in trying to create a biological weapon out of it. We know how long the human body can survive without certain organs because they conducted experiments where they removed those organs and then observed how long it took the patient, completely unsedated, to die. They were some of the most heinous and cruel war crimes in history, but the research progressed medical knowledge by decades and is still used today. There is a reason you rarely hear about Unit 731, and it was because they were granted complete amnesty for handing over all their research to the US after the war. Story 22. There's a thing called terminal lucidity, or also called the rally. Happens in about 30% of terminal patients who are at the end stages of their illness. It's like the body just bounces back like nothing was ever wrong in the first place. Some people even get up out of bed and are active. Alzheimer's patients seemingly get all their memories back and are back to their old personalities. The catch is, it can last anywhere from just minutes to a full week. It's never been fully studied because the patient either doesn't last that long or doctors just don't know what they're looking for. It's just an accepted part of the dying process. I've also heard about how death visions, the seeing of already dead loved ones or talking about the strange shadow man child in the room, are just as baffling since antipsychotic meds don't stop the person from having them. Story 23. Your brain can kill you literally whenever it wants to. You can die because your brain thinks you're dying. They had done this experiment on a prisoner. They took off his vision and cut him with knives, but enough for it to be lethal, and they faked the sound of blood falling with water. The guy ended up dying just because he was severely convinced that he was actually dying. IDK, what killed him exactly? Maybe his heart just stopped. Story 24. The human body is an amazing thing. There are so many different things your body does, or can do, on a regular basis that you might not even know about. But there are also some things about your body that are weird, or even downright creepy. Some of the creepy facts about humans and their bodies will likely surprise you a bit. while others, though strange, really do make sense if you think about them. As interesting as the human body tends to be, it's also awfully mysterious, so if this isn't something you've studied extensively, there are a lot of facts that are fairly unknown to many people. Warren, a quarter of your bones are in your feet. It sounds like it can't possibly be true, but it is. Dr. Sarepta Isaac, DPM, a podiatrist in Atlanta, tells Romper that you have 26 bones in each foot, which means you have 52 in both feet. And since you have just over 200 bones in your body, that's roughly a quarter in just your feet. You make up to 30 gallons of tears per year. Tears serve many purposes and are caused by many things: working through breakups, dicing onions, watching the movie Up, seeing Harry Styles live, and so on. Your eyes are basically producing them all the time. In fact, according to the American Academy of Ophthalmology, you make 15 to 30 gallons of tears each year, which is an insane amount when you think about it. Story 25. If you're underwater holding your breath, i.e. free diving, there are no warning signs that your CO2 level is too high. You just black out, go limp, and drown, unless somewhere is there to pull you out and perform CPR. CPR had a very, very high success rate in bringing around hypercapnic blackouts due to the fact that you haven't panicked and tried to breathe in water. There have been cases of two people free diving together and both drowning because they didn't have a safety number. Never free dive without a competent instructor buddy rigged up with scuba gear to save you if you push it too far. Story 26. My body, one day, just decided to develop what are essentially anaphylaxis allergic reactions, but slower moving, to things I'm not actually allergic to. It's a lifelong condition I have to take daily medication for so that I can swallow and not have an obstructed airway. The allergy cannot be avoided as it's seemingly random, and tests show nothing new. But unmedicated, it can cause your throat to not only swell closed, but fill with scar tissue. It's also a now known side effect of another medical condition that I have, only really known about in the last decade, but so far it's being controlled. Fingers crossed for things to stay that way. Story 27. The fact that we can keep people with zero brain activity alive for decades with ventilators via a hole in the throat and tube feeding through a permanent tube in the belly happens all the time with healthy young people who overdose on opioids and suffer anoxic brain injuries. They can't breathe, interact, eat, move voluntarily, or use the toilet. Vent farms, or the facilities that care for these long-term patients, tend to be for profit and are poorly staffed. The tube feed causes multiple episodes of acidic diarrhea daily, and people wind up with horrific bed sores from lying in it. Story 28. If you iron out all the wrinkles in a human brain, it would be the size of a pillow. Also, if you straightened out your small intestine, it would be 3.5 times your height. Oh, also, the fact that our brain is selfish by only protecting itself. Your brain will do anything to protect itself, no matter if it means the readiness of your body suffers or dies. What's that? You're only feet away from the door in a burning room, and you're breathing in smoke which is getting to your brain. Your brain will say "ya nah" and tell your lungs to stop breathing and let you go unconscious. Story 29. I studied medical subjects, and I am still learning that the body does not fight all diseases, but rather allows deceptive diseases to remain not to its will, but only prevents their spread as much as possible. The other thing is that if the body gets used to a specific drug, it is impossible for it to return to its normal state after abandoning this drug. The third fact is that the body contains a carcinogenic substance that is inactive due to the lack of the required stimulant. Some bad habits can activate it. Story 30. This isn't really terrifying, but I think it's mind-blowing when I think about my dad's liver transplant, and if you think about any organ transplant at all, especially heart transplants. You're lying there, your body cut open, but you're still alive. Some of your organs are pulled out or rearranged. They completely removed my dad's liver, detached it, and reattached a new one. Like what? Like my dad for a hot second didn't have a liver in his body. Think about heart transplants. People get their hearts cut out, and immediately a new one is rewired and put in. Nuts. Story 31. Here are a few. Your body is constantly forming cancerous cells. Your immune system doesn't know your eyes exist, and if it did, they would attack your eyes, and you would be blind. Your brain limits the amount of strength you can output. Otherwise, you could lift a car, but you would also tear all of your muscles this way. This is also why, when you have increased adrenaline and excitement in dangerous situations, your strength increases slightly.